Шановні присутні, усі друзі нашої держави.
I am glad to see you all in Kyiv. Thank you very much to everyone for your support. Special thanks to you, Alex, for these 2 days. We are very grateful for such strong support. I also want to especially thank General Kellogg. Indeed, earlier we did not know this, but it turned out that the United States has air defense systems no worse than Patriots. He really says this, Mr. General, that whenever you are here, in Kyiv, people under Kellogg can definitely get a little more sleep. I wish you could travel to all the cities of Ukraine. And we really would like a few more of these American systems for our country. Honestly, this is not exactly a joke. When a representative of the US President, President Trump, is in Kyiv, there are no massive strikes. The killers hold back from killing. With representatives of other countries, this does not work. Perhaps it would work with a representative from China, but it seems China is not interested in stopping, if not the entire war, then at least the strikes. Unfortunately, this also does not work with representatives of international organizations, including the largest ones. When the UN Secretary-General Guterres was in Kyiv, Putin carried out strikes. And rather demonstratively too. The Russians hit not only with drones but with missiles as well. The same happened when the OSCE was here, when NATO was here, when the IMF mission was here, or anyone else. So, I think the United States does have the power to influence Putin at least to adjust his behavior. And it's very interesting to raise such a question, how this works. I remember when a Chinese representative was going to Russia, they actually sent us a note with all signals from Beijing urging us not to use long-range weapons while China was in Russia. Interesting. Does America have this same effect with Russia, Mr. General? Maybe this is the way to achieve the ceasefire President Trump mentioned back in February. I am ready to provide General Kellogg with citizenship. Whatever is needed, a flat, anything, if this will encourage Russia to stop the fire. Perhaps China also has the possibility to stop Russia from killing. But the world has not seen China willing to try, at least not toward Russia. China has called for a ceasefire in this war and non-expansion of the war, but Putin has done nothing. That doesn't stop China from hosting Putin and talking to him about, most importantly, longevity. Perhaps Putin has some respect for India. His words suggest it. But Russia also ignored India's calls to end the war and statements that our century is no time for war. And the same goes for all others in the world. Whoever it might be, the Russians do not stop killing in that person's presence or because of their attention. But how long can America's and President Trump's attention to this war and the need to end it last? How long will America continue supporting our defense against Russian strikes? Will the world close its eyes to the fact that Putin still wants to wage war? And he does. I have no doubt Putin was looking for answers to these and other such questions. And the fact that he chose to continue the war clearly states his answer. Putin does not believe in Europe, in America, in defense overall. That is why Russia is fighting. Putin believes in China, Iran, North Korea. That is why he seeks strategic deals there. He bets that money will undermine everyone, both weak and strong. He believes money will let him buy forgiveness for everything. That is his plan, to try to buy forgiveness and continue the war. The main question is, who will sell it to him? Dear friends, every day we all face such questions. They are different, sometimes unpleasant, uncomfortable. And it seems many people in the world do not intend to answer them honestly. It is precisely from these details that a central question of our time is formed: how to end the war. 19 Russian drones were launched toward Poland from the territories of 2 states, Ukraine and Belarus, during Russian military exercises in Belarus. A deliberate strike. NATO countries scrambled fighter jets. A few days passed, and it gradually stopped being a topic. And what consequences for Russia? Let's be honest. None. The day before the attack on Poland, the Russians killed 25 people in the village of Urova in Donetsk region. Ordinary people, elderly people, who came to receive their pensions. These are the very Donbass residents Russia claims it is saving. But it kills them, and this is the very land Russia wants to take, supposedly to rescue. That's the truth. Russia leaves nothing in Donbass except graves and ruins. And of course, we retaliate. But the question is, what are others doing? Just a little over a week before Urova, the Russian flag was flying at the Venice Film Festival. On August 28, the Russians carried out a brutal strike on Kyiv. Children were killed. You remember, more than 20 people died here in Kyiv alone. But this did not prevent the Russian flag from being flown at one of the world's leading art events. Because art is supposedly outside politics, outside war. Art is for the living at festivals, not for the dead in Ukrainian cities and villages after another brutal Russian strike. How can Russians be rewarded for war by being accepted again in the world as if nothing happened? Strong answers are needed. Putin's goal is the occupation of all of Ukraine. And whatever he might say to someone, he has wound up his war machine so that he simply cannot stop it without being forced to fundamentally change his goals, his personal goals. Some may think land swaps or tempting Putin with restored trade with America or the world might stop the war. That is not true. The Russian war machine will only stop when it runs out of fuel. And Putin will start slowing it himself only when he feels his resources for war are running out. That is why it is so essential to have strong responses to every issue, to every challenge. Russia must believe that America, Europe, and the West in general will not allow Russia to wage war. With persuasion alone, with dialogue alone, this cannot be achieved. Real, solid pressure is needed so that, instead of aiming to occupy Ukraine or any other nation, Putin's main goal becomes preserving his economy, his system, his power. We cannot replace his brain, but we can force him to replace his goal. We propose to our partners a way to make Russia stop its strikes, stop its aerial terror. If together with partners we can truly protect our airspace reliably, protect Ukraine above all, and also shield our neighbors like Poland and Romania from Russian threats in the sky, Putin will lose the meaning of his war. With only ground assaults, Russia will not achieve its aims, and in the sea they already lost the ability to operate. It is in fact the US that has and can provide such air defense systems, such a number of combat jets, that as part of a multi-component defense framework, especially of the skies, together with European partners, we can stop Russia's terror. This will definitely force Russia to end the war. Moreover, Putin himself will show through his actions that this must be done. That is the truly strong conclusion to be made after Russian drones struck Poland. Russia always seeks to exploit some kind of deficit, especially a security deficit. It would be right to fill this deficit with effective security cooperation between Americans and Europeans. It is with this purpose that we are building a new system of security guarantees based on our strong army. Thank you, our warriors. With a strong Ukrainian army that is part of European security forces. When we talk about security guarantees for Ukraine, it actually means security guarantees for all of Europe. This is already obvious. It is almost banal, but it must be repeated again and again so that this system is filled with real meaning. I am grateful to all partners who help us. We must also find a way to influence China to apply its power over Russia to end the war. Russia will still remain a supplier of raw materials to China and politically dependent on China. That is the path Russia chose, and it has already gone too far down it. But we need to find an answer on how to motivate China to take the path without war. Much of this depends also on the strength of America and Europe, on the strength of the G7. And one of the key issues now is the isolation of Russia. This must remain. Sanctions work, partly for this purpose. Tariffs must work, partly for this purpose. Russian assets must be confiscated, partly for this purpose. It is also important that principle works in political issues, cultural issues, sports, and all others. Putin's bet on money, on faith that he can buy everything and everyone, must not work. Is this possible? Yes. If the world really wants the war to end. To give Putin some piece of Ukrainian land to make him stop the war, this will not happen. This is not a solution. It is just a pause. Like after 2008 and Georgia, like after 2014 and Crimea and Donetsk. We need a guaranteed end to the war, guaranteed security for us, for Ukraine, for Ukrainian children. We need guaranteed accountability from Russia for what it has done against Ukraine, against Ukrainians, against our Ukrainian children. I thank all who help us achieve this. All who support our defense, who work together with us so that Ukraine and all of Europe become stronger. All who help us in relations with President Trump and with the United States in general. Only together can we achieve peace. And only if we respond strongly to all the questions of this war. Strongly. So that the goals change. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine.